Listen, we only get one shot at this.
Why not live life on our own terms? Hey everyone, it's Tom Kradza, and on this episode of the Your Life, Your Term show, Nick and I sit down again with Ingrid and Richard Clayton. This time they bring a brand new story and a lot of value to the podcast. If you remember, they were back on episode 142, and it's where they shared their brilliant credit card strategy and how they used credit cards to launch some of their real estate investing. They then kind of morphed that into 20 plus properties, and they share that whole journey and story on episode 142 of the Your Life, Your Term show. So if you want to listen to that and how they did that with their real estate investments, go to rockstarinnercircle.com/podcast. Look for episode 142 and you will hear their story. It is a really popular episode of ours. And Ingrid and Richard are back because Ingrid has written a book. We talked about it on that previous podcast, but now she has completed the book and it's published. It's called Good Grades Rock, but A+ does not equal success. Why school should teach you financial literacy. And it is a thorough book. She covers everything from real estate to business building to insurance policies to credit lines, and they share their whole story and what they've done in this book. It's absolutely incredible. It's jam-packed. Just the intro alone, where she talks about some of her struggles and trying to be a perfectionist and test, and how she reflects back on that era of her life and what she now thinks about tests and evaluations and what role they play in your success is really insightful. So just that alone is a really great part of the book. So it's called Good Grades Rock, but A+ does not equal success. She has a website built out for this book, which has a ton of workshops on it as well that she did not mention on the podcast. So we want to call that out. So if you listen to this on the show notes of this episode, you'll see financialliteracy.rocks.com is the URL. And on there, you'll get information about the book, but you're also going to see a link in the top right corner to workshops. And she has different workshops that she is offering. There's no charge for these workshops, so you can go out and check those things there. It's Financial Literacy Rocks. Hit the top right-hand corner, workshops. There's 5 different workshops. You could submit the form, get access to these workshops. We are just thrilled to have them both back. Richard, we didn't really pepper him with questions this time because this was mostly about Ingrid and her book, even though it's both of their story. But we are just thrilled to have them on this episode for them to share the story. And when you hear how serious she is about this and what she's doing here in Canada to really try and push and improve some of our education, I think you'll be impressed. So if you are listening to this and you are also thinking about going down a real estate investing journey, you can get some of the education that Rockstar puts out at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. You can get access to the introductory training class that we do once a month. We have videos, podcast, links to podcast episodes like this. We have reports. One of our most underrated reports, in my opinion, is the population explosion report. We're going to update it soon, but even in its current state, the information it gives you about some of the fundamental demand building in this area is really not reported in very many places. You can get that at rockstarinnercircle.com/reports. That's it for the intro. Let's get on with the show.
Are you ready to live life on your terms? Is it time to take charge? Real estate, business building, the economy, health and nutrition, and more. It's the Your Life, Your Term show with Tom and Nick Kradza. Are you ready? Let's go.
We are live with Ingrid and Richard Clayton, and Nick is accepting a meat delivery at his house through text message here, so he will be on the mic soon. But Nick is here with us as well. So we were just saying, Ingrid and Richard, when you guys were here last time and you shared with everybody your story about getting to like 20 properties or whatever it was 20 properties. I feel 20, right?
We're at 20 now, yeah.
Yeah, 20 properties now.
We got more. We had more. We sold
I know.
a few, yeah.
You had more.
Yeah.
And then the way you did it and you shared it. So anyone listening to this haven't heard about Ingrid and Richard's story. On the first podcast, they explained how they got started. And I think it was Ingrid, right, who was juggling credit cards. And we had a bunch of people reach out to us saying, you guys have said that it's not good to use credit cards to buy properties, but Richard and Ingrid were able to do it. Why can't I do it? And we had to go to defense mode saying, well, yes, it's possible to use money from credit, but very few people do it well. they're the exception. So if you're going to do it, please be careful.
That's correct.
Is that how you guys would advise
Absolutely.
people?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can get addicted onto the credit
Of
cards and use
course.
the money for the wrong reasons, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So a testament
have
to you
to
guys,
know.
though. Did you have people reaching out to you about that podcast?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We did. and I had people sending it all over the world. Like I have a friend in Florida. He was like, I sent it to my friends in Spain. Yeah, and Italy. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, he was very inspired by that. So,
It's a great story. It's a great story. And before we go further on today's subject, you have a beautiful gold chain on here.
Oh,
Why?
yeah.
What is that? Something from the family? A gift?
Actually, well, this one I used to, when I was in high school, I used to help this friend of mine do vertical blinds, right? So back then with the vertical blinds, you had to use glue to glue the the weights that goes in. You have to glue the edges so it doesn't fall out or whatnot. So I used to help him a lot. And for my birthday, my 18th birthday, he actually bought that for me. So I have this. I don't want to age myself.
Wow,
but
no, that's a no. To buy that necklace. Now I'm just looking at that necklace. That is a beautiful gift. We should all get into the vertical blinds helping business because that is a beautiful. That's a
Yes.
beautiful gift.
So it was a wonderful surprise. My 18th birthday. It was like, oh, you've always helped me so much, and I was never paid for it. It was just helping, right? Because his grandma was really good to me when I was in high school. So I would just help. We're just used to helping, and I guess that was the reward. So,
Where was that? Were you already in Canada then?
oh no. I went to I did even my first degree in Jamaica. We came just in 2000.
I've lost track. It's only been since 2000.
Yes, we
Yeah.
only came in 2000.
Holy
It's
smokes!
not that long.
You guys are taking Canada by storm. Holy shit! No, that's great. Okay, got it. Okay, and the reason I'm looking at the necklace, sorry, I will stop now, but I remember my wife has a gold bracelet that I got her when at the end of university. So this is going to be like mid to late 90s.
Right.
And I remember when I went to buy it, the lady in the store that was helping me looked at me, and I guess I had a backpack on. I was a student,
Right.
and I said I wanted a gold necklace, and she brought up this thing of I guess she thought I had $5 to my name, and it was this thread. Like I need a magnifying glass even to see the thing. I said no, I can get something a bit more than that, and she brought out this beautiful gold bracelet with this awesome clasp, and it was $350.
Oh,
And I remember thinking, okay, that's pretty expensive, but I love it. I'm going to get it for her. Now that bracelet, just in the gold value of it alone, you could
Yes.
never buy. You don't even see bracelets like that for sale anymore. So
Yes.
just interesting how times have changed.
Yes,
Okay, but the
absolutely.
reason that you guys are here is the book. So
Absolutely,
what
yes.
got you in the name of the book is Good Grades Rock, but A+ does not equal success. Why school should teach you financial literacy. So can you explain a bit about your background and what gave you the idea to write this book?
Absolutely. So we came here in 2000 kind of to start all over. And we went through a lot of different challenges. It was great that we came. Richard was already working because he came into a job. I came as a teacher, which was good, coming from from Jamaica, the Caribbean, because it's the British system that we have there. The education system is like the British system. When we come, we don't have to go to school here to start teaching. Just send in your papers and you get your letter of eligibility to start teaching, and eventually you get your certificate of qualifications. So you're pretty much set. So coming here and feeling like we're starting over from scratch. And sometimes when I look at the opportunities, because we came here for opportunities. We came here to give her, at the time we had one son, right? And we wanted to give him opportunities to set him up for more success. And coming here, we were like, what did we do, right? Was it a wise move or whatnot? But soon after, it wasn't. It turned out.
Why on that part? Sorry, why was it? Why did you have that thought? Just the difficulty to quote unquote get ahead? Was that that why?
It wasn't so much to get ahead in the sense that we didn't think that we could make it here. It's just the feeling of starting all over. We had our home, back home, and we come here. We were renting, right? Never used to rent, never rented before, and we were wondering and. Maybe I should step back a little bit, because we came in 2000, got pregnant in 2001, 2002, Richard got laid off, right? So I think with all of that, I'm wondering, is it going to work? So I was stuck, we can get up to 1 year off for mat leave, but I didn't take it because I U.S. company had bought his company at the time, and I felt like, people were being laid off, and because he was recently in the company, they say last in, first out, and I felt like he was going to go soon. And my son was born in May, and, school starts in September. I was thinking of taking the first semester off, but then I was thinking, at the time, I wasn't so knowledgeable about the system, so I wasn't sure they would be able to place me. At the time, I didn't realize that if you tell them that you're going to be off semester 1, they will automatically place you based on seniority. But at the time, I wasn't that knowledgeable, so I didn't know. So I was thinking, maybe if I don't go on, I don't start in September, I won't get a placement for February. So I said to him, I'm going to go back. My mother-in-law came here to help me with the baby. And I said, I'm going to go back because I felt like you're going to get laid off soon, And sure enough, by November, he was laid off. But I was happy that I went back in September because I was working. So to be stuck with just one income, and when you come, I pretty much start at level 1 because I'm just starting. And it takes a while for them to put you, because the union, eventually you send in the papers to the union. It takes some time, but eventually get to the appropriate level that you're supposed to be. But you always start at just level 1. And
because you already had experience as well.
I had experience, but that is not included until all the paperwork is handed in, because I had to send experience, because you're coming, you're not even sure what you have to bring with you, right? I know I had to bring my transcripts and of course my degree. I don't even know where my degree, I haven't seen my degree in years. So
all of us, you get the degree, you throw it in the back corner somewhere and you begin life. But and I should be clear, just so if anyone's listening, it was a math teacher.
Yes.
Correct?
Math
I
and
don't
computer
know if we
science.
said that already.
That's what I did.
Oh, and computer science.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, got it.
So those are my 2 teachables. So when I came, so I figured I needed to bring my degree. I needed to bring a transcript for proof, but I didn't know I had to bring like a letter of employment to show that I've been with the Ministry of Education in Jamaica for that number of years. So until you have that proof, they put you at level 1. That's where you start. So until everything comes in and you prove, all the experience that you have, only then that you get pushed to the category that you're supposed to, and you get the income that you're supposed to, right? So and that takes a little bit of time. So with all of that, I was wondering, how are we going to do this? By November, we were on one stream of income, and I never liked that, because back in Jamaica, apart from doing our regular day job, we always had, like, I used to teach we used to call it lessons class. It's really just after school class that we teach for extra money. During the summer, you teach for extra. Richard and my brother-in-law had a computer kind of computer institute thing in the evening. Yeah, training, and I would do that too. So there are multiple things that I would be doing, and then you come here, and I'm like, it's just one thing. It just felt weird, and like, we're not gonna move too fast, under that circumstance. And with that, I said, what can we do? So I remember when I had my second son. And he was about, I think, because I had my mother-in-law helping me, that was a great help. But somewhere in the book, I wrote that he was like clockwork, man. He was like an alarm clock. Every night he would get up like at 2:00. I would be preparing because I was transferred to a different school in September from the school I was at when I was pregnant and when I went on mat leave. And I was at a new school, and they gave me courses that I've never taught before. So I had to be planning everything. And then I would, go to sleep maybe at 1:00, 2:00, my son will be up, and I'm there with him. And next thing you know, I probably get another hour or 2 of sleep, and I have to get up to go to work, So
from that point, like when you were going through that, and you realized there was something there, there wasn't the one income, you were dealing with the kids. Where did you, how did it transfer from, like, you were teaching math, you were doing that, you got it, you were in Jamaica teaching math, you went to school in Jamaica, you were transitioning, you were traveling down this kind of very common path that we're all taught and showed as the most common path. So then what changed for you, and what triggered the, like, holy cow, I'm missing something here? and because the book is about kind of financial literacy, and you deal with numbers all the time, and you're like, hey man, there's something kind of missing in the numbers. So when did that transition take place for you?
Definitely. So when we came, naturally, when you leave Jamaica, you have to come with a certain amount of income. So they said, come, that's to cover you until, things start to pan out well. And when we came, because Richard came into a job, then we didn't really have to use much of that income or much of the funds that we brought up, because his income was decent to cover pretty much everything, or the rent and everything for the most part. So, we bought like a few furniture. We were in, a condo. We didn't buy too much, bed, make sure we had a table, basic things, and we stick to that. So when Richard was laid off, then we had most of that, that money there, except what we lost from mutual funds, because we came here and we went to
damn mutual funds.
I know.
I gotta take the opportunity to say damn mutual funds.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we didn't know about mutual funds in Jamaica, when we invested, we're big on credit unions, and credit unions is like, even when you borrow money, your money keep growing. So that's what we're used to, right? So let's say you had like $50,000 in a credit union, and you probably borrowed, because I remember at one point I borrowed like $20,000 to buy what was it again? Was it a new TV? I can't remember what I bought, but the point is that the $50,000 kept growing, and then I gradually pay back the loan. So then it's not like $30,000 is left and interest is being accumulated on $30,000. Interest is still accumulated on the $50,000, and then
did you have to have the $50,000 to start?
Well, so that was what I have. So let's say, and
oh God,
I don't
so
remember
then
how much
you
I
can
have.
kind of borrow against your own
Yes,
deposit,
you
almost like a life insurance policy. Or
Similar,
something?
exactly.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the life insurance, you can take out 90%, but the rest it keeps growing because you keep
And
paying.
that's when there was interest, because now at interest rates there's
exactly
it just doesn't work.
Right. So then when we came, we didn't know about anything like that. So we did mutual funds because we went to RBC. RBC was where we had all our money, and the guy said mutual funds are good. We were like, oh, okay. So we figured, you're a financial advisor, you know better and stuff.
Like all of us went through the same thing. Oh, this mutual fund thing. Okay, that sounds great. Yeah,
I know.
Sign me up. Which I don't know which ones. What do you think? Oh, these ones. Okay, I'll do those ones.
Right. And when 9/11 hit, and we were looking at what we had, like the money was just going down. We weren't used to that. We weren't used to our principal being less than what we put in.
I like how you're laughing. Richard's laughing. I'm not. I wouldn't be laughing at this. I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
Well, he wasn't laughing then. I was like, what the heck is this? And then when we really took stock and realized that they were taking up, because we didn't know about this front end loaded or back end loaded at the time. We didn't know these things. And when we looked, we were like, they're still taking fees, even though the funds are not performing. What is this? So with that, we're like, no, this is not going to work. And yeah, so I can't remember. I think I took out some. I think we took out all of it actually, and I put it on GIC. And you know what they say about GIC, but I said, you know what? I prefer to get at least my principal back than my money going down when nothing is coming in. And so we started looking into GIC and all that, and then the following year we. Actually, it was later that same year that we bought a home. We bought our first home here. We paid down on the home because we didn't close until 2002, right? And so we kind of used up all our funds for the down payment for the home. And we also bought a van because then I'd asked my mother-in-law she retired the same year to come and help me out with the baby. And we were thinking, we're not, we have family in Oakville. Richard still have family in Oakville. So this is where we used to come for Christmas dinner, for Easter, for Thanksgiving. So we're always in Oakville. And we're all the way over there in Markham. And I didn't want to be driving 2 cars, right? So I said, let's get a van because that could fit everybody. The baby, my youngest son, the baby, the car seat, and then bought a van. So imagine we just bought a home because we closed in February 2002. Just bought a home, just bought a van, furniture to put in the new home and all that. And then the baby came in May, and Richard got laid off in November. Like. Seriously, like what is that? So then I said to him, while he was off, we had some time, and I said we have to do something. It cannot just be just our day job. We need to go back to, doing something extra on the side, a side hustle where we can come in with, a little bit extra cash flow and whatnot. So, and I said to him that I don't want to be, because I remember that time I had to juggle. I think that's when I learned really how to manipulate these credit cards. Yes, and then I had to do a lot of juggling because, he had his RSP that we're doing. My son's my son, that was, because at that time I just had my first son, our ESP. And I still didn't want to stop contributing. So I tried as much as possible to keep what we're doing and to cut what we could cut so that it could still work. Right. And we got it to work for the most part because we did not deplete the little extra funds that we had from, what we brought up from Jamaica and whatever little savings that we had. We didn't deplete that. So we kept that. So once he was employed again, we started thinking about what can we do? What can we do? We need to do something. So he started doing video on the side. When my son was old enough, I started to do night school. And I realized that we were working harder, we were taking away time from the kids, but no extra money was coming in. And, fast track to 2008, which is when we actually sold our home back in Jamaica, and we have all this money and, there's nothing there. And we're like, what do we do? And so we really got into thinking, we cannot continue to do this night school. It wasn't giving us any extra income. We weren't going to get rich in that. Not that we were thinking about getting rich at the time. We just wanted to make sure we had something that could sustain us. God forbid Richard should lose his job again. By that time, I had better income too from teaching. So because I was put in the right category, by then. But still, I still didn't feel comfortable, and so. Eventually, I said, we when we sold a home in Jamaica. And we got all the income from that. We converted it to US dollars and we brought it in. And after the mutual fund experience, we were like, what are we going to do with this money? It doesn't make sense because interest rate was so low and all that. So we thought about it. We said, okay, this is a good time to move because the mortgage rates had, dropped a whole lot. And
that was a perfect time to get
perfect time
to
right.
get into the real estate market. At that exact time, we had many people telling us to our faces, you guys are in the wrong place at the wrong time. Do not get into real estate. Right. That was the financial crisis in the US is happening at that point, but you guys just hit it at the right time.
That's right. Because that's when we bought our condo in Florida as well, about the same time, because it was a foreclosure and we got it. And
so during that journey, because then now it's your real estate journey that takes off from 2008.
Right.
During that journey, because and we'll get to the book in a second. When was it that you realized the money system wasn't being taught in school? Was it already in your head, or was it understanding real estate and maybe good debt versus bad debt? When was the moment you're like, holy smokes, we could be doing more in schools? Was there a transition in your thinking there?
It started kind of, it really started when we lost that money in the mutual funds and all that, at first I was wondering, to an extent, because I didn't go to school here. I thought,
oh God,
I thought, yeah,
maybe I missed something. Maybe they are teaching some
right,
of this.
Precisely.
And you didn't realize that there's nothing happening here.
Right. So, and I didn't wrap my head around it. For the most part, I felt like I was shortchanged because I didn't grow up here. I didn't go to to school here, and that's why I was kind of behind. But I remember, getting closer to 2008, which is as I thought about it more and more, I realized that, and actually when I talked to even colleagues and stuff, and even before that, because there are times because before that I was using credit card to kind of make money from credit cards, and then when I would share this with my colleagues, they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense and stuff. So then slowly
Richard,
I started
what
to
were you
realize.
about to say there?
No, well, I remember one time she shared it with somebody at the bank, and she was like, "What? You remember the...
Yes.
Because you were just, this is when you weren't using it for proproperties yet. You were just shuffling the money around.
Yes, I was just the balance transfer to 0%. So I was just taking those and put them on GICs because that time, because in 2005, 2004, I think I started in 2004. That time you could get 5% GIC, right?
So you were taking the credit. We didn't know that. So you were taking the credit card at 0% interest for however long? Maybe 6 months? Was it
no,
a year?
whole year.
Whole year.
Year or 15 months. Yes,
taking
whatever
the money,
it was.
putting into a GIC, earning the 5%, and then paying the credit card back at the end of the year when the GIC is due.
Exactly, and that was all money from
Oh my
my
God.
pocket.
But that makes sense.
Ingrid for Finance Minister of Canada. Holy smokes!
Right, and then when
You're just doing a pure arbitrage play there.
Exactly.
precisely, and I try to get other people to do it too, but they're like, "You're crazy." They thought I was doing something wrong, right?
Illegal,
yeah,
yeah.
illegal, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because you just have to pay the minimum balance, right? Because you know what? And I realize that a lot of people think that credit cards are interest cards. That's how they think about them. Once you think credit card, oh, I don't want to pay interest, and I said to some colleagues like, no, I don't pay it. Why do you think you're gonna pay it? It's 0%. You pay the minimum balance, right? And by the time it's due, you take the money off because you put it in a 1-year GIC, and then you take the same money back to pay it, and then the interest is yours. And some people could not conceptualize that, and that's when it started to kick in.
And the discipline too. Sorry, I cut you off. What started to kick in?
It started to kick in that I wasn't disadvantaged because I was educated in Jamaica. These people just didn't know anything. Yeah.
You don't get the education, and a lot of people don't have the discipline. Because a lot of people, if they're putting $10,000 to put in a GIC, the $10,000 gets in their hands, and they're like, well, maybe we'll put in $7,000 because I could buy a few things that I really wanted, and then all of a sudden, then that extra $3,000 is like this debt. Maybe goes somewhere else, and it just spirals out of control. And it goes back to exactly what you were saying, because no one's taught any different, right? We're taught how to add and integers, and my daughter's doing stuff now in grade 5 that I didn't think I did till grade 9. She came home, she's like, hey, I got to do long division. I'm like, long division? I go, I have no idea how to do that anymore. Here, there's this thing called a phone, right? But I learned. I relearned grade 5 math. It took me a little bit to remember, but you're not taught anything about that.
Nope. And so I tried to connect what was happening in real life with what was happening in my classroom. And then, so that's when I really started to reflect, and I'm like, wait, I'm teaching the math courses, and I taught all the math courses, and it's like, the courses that covers stuff like that, like credit card and RESP, saving for education, those are like the applied courses, the low-level courses that parents do not want their children to do those. So when I really...
So all the most valuable stuff is in the lowest level course.
Exactly.
On how to do derivatives at the calculus level is the A-level course, where you're never going to do a derivative again in your life. Holy, never. I know there's an application to derivatives. I just mean everybody should have that base.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that's when I started to think about it, that, it's not there. The courses where you find them, parents do not, and kids, there's a stigma attached to those courses as well. So they don't want it, because think about a budding lawyer doing an essentials math course. Like, what? I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm doing an essentials math course? Because they think of it like basic math, or kids like to say, oh, only the kids who are dumb do that, And
I like in the introduction of your book, you kind of go through great lengths sharing your story, how it seems, and I bookmarked that one point that I read to you earlier. I just want to read it again. It says, is school focused more on learning or more focused on testing and grading? There are times when I feel like my students spend more time focused on writing evaluations and worrying about marks than they do on learning. Absolutely. And I think that hits home on everything, because when Nick and I interview people to work here at Rockstar, we want people who are going to be resourceful problem solvers and not linear thinking. And I think sometimes in school, to do well in an evaluation or a test, it's very linear. Here's the question, solve the question. Right. Whereas we want people who are going to be, here's the question, you can't use your calculator, your eraser broke, your pen is broken in half. You might have to write with blood on the like, how are you going to get through this test? Yes. There's a fire alarm going in the background, someone screaming to you at the front. What are you going to do to get through this test? And the life skills from that is almost more valuable than getting 96 on a linear math equation. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about that? Do you think our school system, I guess you do, our school system is very heavy on that, and parents are kind of taught to just look at the marks?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, go through your story on that.
Right. I mean, it is so bad sometimes that you work the same question in class, you just change the number or you change the letter, and they're like, I can't do that question, miss. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't do that question? We did a question like that yesterday. No, or in fact, sometimes if I change Nick to Tom, it throws them, right? Because they're not they're not conceptualizing, what they're doing, the problem solving process. They're not reading it and saying, this is the tools that I need to select. This is how I need to apply the tools to solve this problem, because they're not about problem solving. They're not, the critical thinking is just not there, because they're more focused on getting the grades. And to some extent, I don't blame the kids, because the parents, pressure comes from the parents too, because some parents, I find, they try to live their lives through their kids. And even though the child may not want to pursue, like, I see the doctor in you, or I see the engineer or whatnot. Maybe the child wants to be a musician, right? And you're like, no musician in the family, right? What are you thinking about that for?
Get that saxophone away from me, man.
Exactly. So it's about the marks. And, I've been in parent interview where the child is trying so hard, right? And my heart goes out. But the parent look at the child so disappointed, like, what kind of mark is this, right? And they don't understand that there are students who will not perform as well. I mean, God gave us different talents, right? A lot of people say there is no math gene. But I feel like when it comes to, logical thinking and, numbers and all that, some people have a knack for that, right? They just automatically will just run with that. And there are some kids who, they need more time to process it. They need more repetition, right? They always say repetition is the mother of learning. So I believe everybody can learn. The rate at which people will learn, it's different. And sometimes to hit the mark that you really want, the child may have to do it multiple times.
How do we do that? How do we put that into the school system? It seems difficult, I guess. Like, so now I can have sympathy for teachers and the school system, because I realize, like, okay, the next step is everybody thinks their kids should go to university. I mean, my own son's in university, right? So you need certain marks to get into university. So yeah, Ingrid, all sounds great, but I just need this damn mark to get to the next step. And I feel like it's hard to change this system.
It
right?
is
like you're in it. So yeah, it's difficult.
It's difficult because one of the things that we're always faced with, so let's say a student got 46%, and we're saying, the student has not mastered the skill, but sometimes they say, just give the student a 50, their self-esteem so they can move on. But what you find is that they get moved from class to class without mastering the basic skills that they need. And by the time they get to grade 11 or 12, the gap is so wide that they can't find themselves. And then they get there and they want to get into this program and they can't, because they need math at a certain mark, right? Which I don't necessarily agree with, because I know that some of these kids, they're so motivated. You put them in an environment where they love to do something, they will run with it, right? So I feel like sometimes when they say, you have to get a 75 or 85 in math to get into this program, I feel like that is kind of a barrier for students who could perform very well in those areas because they love that field.
Totally. And
right?
as by way of example, I know my son with some of his friends, you talk to them about grade 12 math and they're like, yeah, whatever. But you talk to them about buying NBA cards at a certain price, and this rookie's going to get so many points, and what is percentage from the 3-point line versus other rookies' percentages, and what you can buy this running shoe for, and what it's reselling on the market for. And you hear these kids talk about this stuff. Yeah. They're masters at math. Yeah. They're better at math than me. True. And not only are they better at math than me, that I'm listening to them and I'm like, they're mastering business skills here. They get math for business all combined, but they don't even realize what they're doing. And we don't really encourage that more. It's more like, put those away. Make sure you get the 90 on the calculus test so you can get into university.
Yeah.
You know, and it's tough.
I've wondered the same thing. And then with your book, I was thinking about this topic, right? About the math type of thing, because it's a lot of what you say makes sense. Like, why is there not basic stuff taught in math, like compound interest, like how interest works on credit cards, some financial literacy. And then I was like, well, is it a math thing, or is it just we need this a financial literacy stream or course? Like, we almost need a life skills course introduced. And if we're not going to have that, then we take the number side of it and put it into the math program, because there's certain things that you're going to use in your life. Like, even leaving high school, at 18 years old, you can get a credit card. And if you don't understand how bad it is to carry a balance on that credit card and how much it will set you behind if you're paying 18% or 19% interest on it.
You can be a slave to debt for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's so important. But that should be mandated.
It should be, right? And place a lot of emphasis on things like numeracy, which really is about the abstract math, right? Instead of those basic things that you're talking about that students need when they move on. Like you said, at 18 they can get a credit card, and if they don't know how to use it, in no time they're in this debt.
Yeah.
Right.
What's abstract math? Is that like like integer, like a variable?
Algebra.
You're already
geometry.
Yeah. Okay. That type of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Ingrid, you're past us already. See, you got us lost.
I'm learning from the math teacher.
Please, what are you talking about? 2 + 2 is 5. No.
It is, and I always wondered that. Like even in school, I'm like, look, I'm all for learning stuff. I just the type of student that I was when I was in the earlier grades.
Nick added things up on the barbell. He could add up those numbers really quick.
I wasn't working out at the time. I was so because in the earlier grades, it was all stuff I could apply to real life.
Right.
And then as I went, into older grades, I started learning things that in my head, I'm like, I don't get why I'm doing this, because I'm not interested in being the engineer. And I get why that exists. It's very valuable. And if you're going down that path, but for me, I wasn't going down that path. And it made school harder for me. I was an honor roll student 9, 10, 11 without trying too hard. Then I kind of got like I was turned 16. I could hang out with my friends more and that type of stuff. But it also there was a disconnect for me personally between what I was learning and what I could implement in real life. And that caused me to lose interest. And that's why my studies or my grades started to fall at that time.
Absolutely. And that's what happened to a lot of students, because they cannot, and that's why I always get the question, Miss, why are we doing this? Or I like to say the cousin question too. Who in their right mind, use this in the real world, right? Because they cannot see the connection between what they're doing in class and to what's going on. And that is what failing students, and it doesn't just impact their creativity in math per se, because society feels like if you're not getting the grades in math, you're not as smart, right? For some strange reason, they measure your intelligence and your smartness by your performance in science and math, which I don't know why, and then students, because that is kind of inculcated in them, they feel like, oh, if I'm not hitting the grades in math, then I'm not that smart. So they don't put out as much effort in other disciplines where they could be, really
they get stereotyped,
discouraged.
or they stereotype themselves.
Yes,
because
exactly.
the arts aren't respected as much.
Right.
Maybe now that's changed a tiny bit, but for the most part, it's not. It's science
not.
and math matters the most, and that's what makes you smart or no good. You could get a 95 in English, but if your math score is 70, well, you're not really that smart.
True.
Right.
True. Absolutely. It's a hard battle, because part of the problem too is how they call these courses, because and something I mentioned in the book is, what if you would call, because the course that they say, oh, it's an essential course, why don't you call it math for everyday application, right? Why don't you call maybe the calculus and stuff that they need from engineer or actuarial science, whatnot? Call it that. Give them meaningful names so they say what you actually learned there, instead of grade 10 academic, grade 10 applied, grade 10 essential, grade 11. You know what I'm saying? There's no value to that. So sell the courses according to what students will learn, because I believe if you have a course math for everyday living or everyday application, doesn't matter if you become a lawyer, a doctor, or whatnot, you're going to want to do that, because that's where you'll find those real life application things like you were mentioning, that you can see the connection between what I'm doing here and what I'm going to do later on in life. And then students will perform better because they can relate to it.
Why do you think that, like, this isn't rocket science? So why do you think this doesn't exist?
To some extent, I've mulled over this hours. Even when I was doing my book, I thought about it, and I kind of alluded to this, and I wonder if the government, it's just a way the education system is there to create employees to work for people and not know too much. You don't want too many people to succeed, right? But which is kind of counter intuitive, because one of the reasons why we're in so much debt and the consumer debt, all the problems that we have sometimes, even for people going out to steal and to rob people off it's because they don't feel like they have the capacity or they have the capability to do better, right? Because they feel like they they're missing something, and
Yeah,
they
I
resort
feel like
to
maybe disadvantaged, not
Yes.
starting from the same place, not having the same opportunity as everyone
Absolutely.
else.
Right.
And they think that way because of the way we explain the world to them. It feels like some people are being left, they feel like they might be being left behind.
Exactly.
It's awful.
Yeah, and they just give up and like, oh, this is what I have to do. But a lot of the atrocities that go, it's happening because of the education system is kind of creating it, right, indirectly. Because, I'm sure you heard Ken Robinson said school kills creativity, and I think to a lot of it really does, because sometimes so I had I give you an example. So I have a student, he wants to do, he's good at science, right? He doesn't want to do anything related to science. He really wants to do business. But one of the challenges that you have, they timetable these courses together. So kind of if you're in science, you can't do business kind of way. And so sometimes, guidance counselors say, oh, but you're great at this. Why don't you continue to do this? But the child doesn't want to do that, right? They should be allowed to do whatever they want to do. And so they get stuck in this maybe a science stream, if you will. And they're moving along and yeah, they can do it, but they're not motivated as much. And so by the time they get to grade 12, right, they're and they're just,
It makes
can't
it hard
find a
'cause-
good word. Yeah,
yeah.
it's because they're not motivated. They're not encouraged to do what they really want to, and eventually they will try for their parents and they will try to get the mark. And after a while, they realize that there is no intrinsic satisfaction that they're getting, and so they
it slows them down, really. It's
Yes, it
counterintuitive
does.
because it slows them down.
It
Because
does.
by the time you get to grade
Yeah.
12, if you're like, no, this really isn't it for me, and you try to go down a different path, you kind of get ramped up again to go down that path and
Right.
build some momentum, right?
It's almost like you have to go through a process of self-discovery that if you get so disenchanted with what you think is possible for your life through the school system, and I know there's a lot of great teachers out there, Ingrid, including yourself. So I'm not trying to say that it's the people in there, it's the system.
No.
It's the system more than it is the
Yeah, it's a
people in
systemic
the
problem.
system. And I think when you get disenchanted in school, like I've seen so many of my friends go down that path, you almost have to go through a process of self-discovery. And for me, it happened in the 20s where you pick up some books, like you talk about Think and Grow Rich and Bob Proctor and all these guys. You read this stuff, and then I just reflect back on how much that really helped me say,
Right.
oh my God, that's why I think your
Yeah.
book is so valuable, because your book can serve that for other people, that you have to pick up books like yours to then realize, oh my gosh, there is another way. There is opportunity for me. Here's what I need to know. And it's like the light or the enthusiasm of life comes back on. Then that's what happened to me. Because when I went through school and finished with university, I'll never forget that I went into that 9 to 5 job in the IT department on Front Street down there for RBC. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm just going to be stuck doing these computer programs and doing like some, Q&A work on existing. I'm not actually going to program anything new here. I'm just doing quality assurance work on old programs to make sure they work for the year 2000. This is my life. I went to grade school. I went to high school, got 90s in high school before I got my car, and then it kind of went sideways. But I got my 90s in the first few years of high school, low 80s the rest of the way. But went to university, got this degree, and then I start working, and I'm like, this is my life? Now this is my life. Every day I wake up, I go downtown, I pay for the Go Pass, or if I drive, I pay for parking, I have to pay for lunch, I have to buy nice clothes that are basically making me bankrupt, and then I have to go to this job and sit in this cubicle and do Q&A work. I started having nightmares. And that forced me into reading books and seeing opportunity. I thought, oh my gosh, there's another way. Yeah. But if you don't go through that period of picking up some books and realizing there's more opportunity for all of us, like you guys did with real estate, and Richard, how much you've explored with everything that you've explored, I feel like you can just get lost in life. And before you know it, you snap your fingers, you're 50 years old, and everything sucks.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I feel this is why it's important to get this book in the hands of as many people as possible. So I want to talk about that part of, how you wrote in here that the love of money is the root of all evil, how we're kind of, eventually, it's usually in our generation, like you come across that thinking. How did that impact, how did you overcome that? What was it that made you overcome that thinking?
Reading and listen to successful people and listen to all the great things that they do when they become successful. You realize that to be able to help people the way you want to help them, you can't help them when you're poor. It doesn't work. And we always talk about being altruistic, giving back to the community, and, helping your brother along the way. And the Bible speaks a lot about this. But one of the things, growing up into the church and all that, and to some extent, the concept or the mindset that people have about money, I think it comes from the home sometimes, and just think about, sometimes you see parents, they always go to buy the lottery thinking that that's the only way they can get money, right? So think about a child seeing that, the only way I can get some money is if I buy the lottery. So then they grew up buying the lottery too, right? But
I never thought about that. It almost teaches in your subconscious, you're almost taught, like, this is the only chance I have.
Exactly. And so they don't think that there is a way to earn money without doing, going back to the lottery, the church think of it as gambling, and gambling is bad, right? And sometimes you hear, they say, for a long time, it was, when I was growing up, I used to hear money is the root of all evil. The love part was not even there, right? So imagine growing up and hearing that money. So you're thinking that, well, I shouldn't get too much money because then I don't want to see myself as being evil, right? So, but again, reading and just expanding your mind and listen to people, listen to you guys, all the great things you guys are doing, for this massive group of people, listen to Bob Proctor, listen to Napoleon Hill, listen, all those great people, you realize that, wait, something is wrong. Even Robert Kiyosaki, I remember one time in one of his books, he was sitting on the beach and saying that, what he did, the amount of money that he contributed to charity and I was like, I would want to be able to do that, but how the heck can I do that if I don't have money, right? So why are they saying that money is the root of all evil? By that time, I know it said love, the love of money, but after a while, you just have to shake that, right? In fact, I also grew up thinking that rich people were mean, right? Rich people were mean, and you're thinking as a kid growing up, I don't want to be mean, right? So if rich means you're mean, then maybe being rich is not a good thing. Maybe having to, which was kind of conflicting to an extent, because I saw the great things that my grandparents did for the community, right, in the church and the community. So it was kind of, you're just confused as a child, right? But what stood out for me was the goodness that you can do when you have more to give, right? And I believe, with reading and building on that, and even thinking back to how my grandparents helped people, that helped me to overcome gradually, to overcome and say, wait, I want to be able to do great things.
Because what you mentioned your grandparents a few times. Talk about that. So what did they teach you? They
taught me, first of all, the multiple streams of income. I really got that from my grandparents, because I believe even on the last podcast, I shared how because they were farmers, that predominantly that's what they did, and
I forgot.
Then,
and
then they had I guess it was called a grocery store, more like convenience. They sold everything, not just groceries, cigarettes, and everything. And my grandma would sell in the market and stuff. So it was kind of like this wheel of just business. This one, flowing into this one, and and it just goes around. So it was one big thing. So being a farmer, it takes time for the crop to come, right? And if you have a flood that washes away everything, it will take a whole season again for that to come back. Not only that, I remember that year. Not only that, the crops were my grandpa had some fields. We call them fields, farming, whatever. But they were kind of on a slope. So all the topsoil and everything so he had to get soil to dump back to be able to. So it was
extra work for him.
Exactly. And it was because of the other things that he were doing, and that kept us going. And, I never felt like we were lacking anything.
There was positive hustlers in your family going.
Exactly.
You made me realize, just remind me of a story of our aunt who would go to the farms from the little villages in Croatia there and negotiate to get people's eggs. And then she would take the bus, which at that time was like 2-3 hours into the city, where she had a little market stand to sell eggs, and she only had a few eggs because she was getting them from the villagers and paying them probably peanuts, and then reselling the eggs. But then when she got bigger, she would get the eggs from like the northern part of Croatia, and she would get them in the hundreds. But when she would go to the market, she would only still put out like 5 eggs at a time, so that everybody thought they were coming local right from like her village.
That's
and I remember looking under the table, and she literally and at her apartment, she would have hundreds and hundreds of eggs, but she would only put out 5, and she would like sell those, and then like out from the table she'd put up more 5, and I was watching her hustle, So like we all have that somewhere in our backgrounds where some family member was like a hustler.
Yes. And
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say it impacts you. You probably don't
When
really
you
know
see it,
It's
it's
in your
almost
psyche.
it is, because now I've realized the last few years, reflecting back on her and some of these stories specifically, I realized what she was doing, and I have more appreciation for it than I did at the time. At the time, I was just like, "Oh, that's how you do it." But now I see what she was doing. Yeah.
What, so you've seen a lot of kids, right? So you in your class, like, do you have these? I guess there's 2 questions. Do you have these conversations with kids sometimes? What triggers them? There's a 3rd question. So what triggers them? And what do you think from what you've seen, like, or maybe your own experiences? What causes someone to go down this path to look at things a different way? Than to kind of change their focus and go down a different path and start looking at the financial side of things a little bit differently for themselves. And I don't know if you're even seeing that at the high school level very much or not.
Not very much, because one of the things that got me to start writing or thinking about writing this book is, so initially students used to come, they come at reading week, they come at the end of their program and say, "Miss, I'm done. I got a job here, I got a job at Yahoo." Yahoo, was a big thing at the time. And then, eventually Google and Facebook and Apple. I had kids who even went on to Apple. Some went to Japan to, because I do, at the school I was at before, we had a lot of immigrants from China, and so they would go and they got great jobs around the world. But then in the last 5 years or so, then you're starting to hear now it's about the student loan, and on the university, the banks go there and camp out and incentivize them to take these credit cards, and they don't know how to use them. So they come out and like, "Miss, I have student loan and I am not even getting a job, to pay my loan back." Sometimes I go out with some of my students, I go for lunch with them and whatnot. And last year, I remember one student said to me, "Miss, you tricked us." And I'm like, "Huh? Miss, you tricked us." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he started to say, "You guys say, if I go to school and if I applied myself well, I work hard and I get the grades and I go to university and do a good job, I get a good degree, I come out, I'll be fine." And he's like, "Miss, I'm not fine," right?
Oh,
and he actually did that. And I said to him, I don't want to say his name, but I said to him, this was one of the reasons. I said, I realize we did you to an extent a disservice, but it's not totally on us because we were just going with the system, right? And I said, now that I see that there's a problem, I'm trying to do what I can do to change that. And so after that, when I do questions for my students, I put in a little financial literacy question there, because and sometimes those are the questions that they stumble over. But you know what? I love taking up those questions with them, and they love it, and bring the real world into it, right? Because even stuff like mortgages, they took that out of the curriculum, right? And that was the next thing too. There were things in the curriculum that could be beneficial, but they gradually take them out. I mean, I look at the grade 11 university course, and they have a financial application at the back. It's at the end of the chapter. Well, what do you think happened when teachers there's not enough time? Yeah. They're not going to hit that, right? It's at the back. So they put it at the back, like it's not that important. To me, that is the most important chapter in the book. That's the one that will help kids the most. And that's what they will use on a day-to-day basis when they come out. And then not only that, I find that some teachers, maybe I'm going to get into trouble for this, but some teachers have issues with it too, right? They cannot understand it. Yeah.
But in their defense, they've also never been taught that.
Exactly. And I remember when I reached, because I reached out to, it was John Malloy at the time, the director of education. He's retired now. And I reached out to him and I gave him a list of things like doing your taxes, credit cards, credit score. I talked to kids about credit score. They didn't even know what that means, right? Doing a budget. So I sent a list of things that I said to him, kids should be learning these things in school, and it shouldn't just be in one. It should be something that they do across curriculum, that they keep hearing it. Because if they're not hearing it in the home, and again, the parents do not know about it to teach them. So this is where we come in to help them. And so I sent a list of things, and and I remember he said, well, he totally agreed that these are things that should be taught, and then he said the board doesn't drive the curriculum, it's the Minister of Education that does. So he kind of connect me with somebody at Minister of Education, and I reached out to them.
Good for you. You're crazy.
I am
you are
crazy.
Good for you. No, we need more Ingrids. Good for you.
So
Richard, this is a powerful woman next to you.
For
Holy smokes.
Yeah, and I reached out to the Minister of Education, and we're back and forth with some emails, and eventually they said, okay, yeah, we heard, Ingrid, financial education will be in the new curriculum that was coming out in the spring. And this
I think Doug Ford
29
mentioned something.
Right.
I don't know what's in it.
Right. So I looked at the curriculum and I see, and then I said, okay, where is it? And I couldn't find it until eventually I heard, it's in civics. So I had some civics and careers, and I had some teachers, and I reached out to them. Do you know about this financial education thing that's gonna know, right? So I reached out back to Malloy, and he put me onto the curriculum.
They hate you. You followed up?
Yes,
Ingrid,
I did.
You followed
I
up?
did.
Oh,
And
gosh.
then
Who's this Ingrid Clayton person? There's some discussion somewhere. Oh, gosh. Ingrid Clayton. Another email from Ingrid Clayton.
I know.
She sent me a copy of this book. Am I supposed to read this book? What's going on here?
Yeah. So
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So when I reached out to the civics team, so
Not good for
eventually
you,
it
just
put it-
thank you on behalf of all of us for doing what
Thank
you're
you.
doing.
Thank you. And so after I reached out to the civics teacher, they're clueless. And I'm like, but I thought it's in civics and careers. You should know, and it's rolling out. So when I reached out back to Malloy, he put me up. He connected me with the curriculum planner at the board level, and they connected with some guys, right? So we're in back and forth, and we're talking. And I said, okay, so financial education is coming out. First of all, where is it? So he said, he was sending me to go look somewhere. And like, no, I'm on there now. Email me. You have my email. Email me where the thing. So I went on it while he was on the phone with me, and we're going through and stuff. So I said, okay, this is not covering what everything that he's. And he said, he did say, well, yeah, we're what did it? Okay, let me not try to code it. Essentially, what he was trying to say, it's a work in progress, right? So I said, okay, fine. How are you going to roll it out? He said, they're going to be PDs and stuff. So I said, and this was in August. So I said, okay, when are these PDs coming out? The curriculum is supposed to be starting in September. And eventually, after back and forth, he's like, you know what, Ingrid, we're not there yet. No, well,
It's
it's another way of living. Yeah,
it's
we're
like
not there yet.
It's like it's not political enough,
Yes.
so they can't. No one
Yeah.
can get behind it to do anything, which is
Exactly.
interesting because they're looking at housing now as like a discriminatory thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like it's discriminatory because if you cater to people with housing, the people with homes, like because it's an asset, can get ahead based on the financial system and that type of stuff, and the people that can't. Or the people that don't, it's harder for them to get ahead, which is kind of what we're talking about. So if you look at it that way, it's very much a political issue because there is something to be said for what they're saying. That is true, right?
Yeah.
Because the system is rigged against people that don't have assets
Yes.
because of the money printing. So it should be a political thing, but I think not enough people even understand it enough to make it a political issue.
And we have
right?
it's just
It's
going to
bigger
get
problem.
nasty
Yeah.
over the next few years. And what really kind of upsets me is that the Canadians who have taken the time to figure out that it's beneficial in this current system to own assets and are being rewarded for it, eventually will be the problem. Because you'll be pointed at
Yes.
like, oh, you guys have asset owners.
Yes.
You're part of the problem. And I'm like, well, time out here for a second.
Yes.
These are Canadians who have figured out how the money system works and are making it work to their advantage. So then they can go help other Canadians, like writing a book on everything that you should know. We need people like this. And instead you're going to be villainized. And I don't mean you two specifically or us. And I just mean asset owners will be villainized.
Yes.
And it just seems like the whole thing, you can almost extrapolate forward and say, we got big problems coming our way. And that's why I like in your book when you included the part at the end about the coming debt crisis.
Yes.
Like you covered everything in this book. I just want to make sure, I just want to read some of the chapters here just so you know. Like you go from good grades matter, high school math curriculum, my experience as a math teacher, financial literacy is missing, financial literacy matters, teaching young people financial literacy. I realized I needed financial education, my journey to become financially intelligent, what I accomplished after becoming financially literate, the debt crisis consumers face, it's time for a change. And in time for a change, you go through life insurance, whole life policies, business building. Like you cover the ground, like you cover ground.
Can you make kids read a book in math class? That'd be a good idea. Hey, in universities, all the profs make them read their own books anyways. That's how those profs stay there with selling their own damn textbooks. You should make sure.
That's right. And we used to have this 20 minutes of reading, and they cut it out. And you know, and no disrespect to the English teachers, but some of those books, like Think and Grow Rich, those are great books that they can do in English. You know, there's so many great books out there.
How many successful entrepreneurs will reflect back on that book as a book that changed their thinking?
Exactly. That's what they should be doing in English. Shakespeare, like. Come on!
Oh, my wife! If my wife heard that, she wouldn't be happy. My wife loves Shakespeare,
and then she loves Ingrid. You've gone one step too far, Richard. You're
my wife's got an English degree, and then she not even Shakespeare, because I agree with you. Like this Shakespeare stuff, like I get it's a play. Like do one, you don't have to do 5 of them, you know.
I know.
But then she went to the next level, Chaucer, which is like if you think Shakespeare is interesting English, Chaucer is like a complete foreign language, man. Chaucer's hardcore. I'm like, wow, and she liked that even more. So her and I are cut from different cloths, very clearly, right?
Chaucer is like the abstract math that she's talking about.
Yeah.
Abstract English.
And I think to be clear, I think we probably all think there's value in having a creative outlet. So if like Romeo and Juliet's going to be your creative outlet, and say, sure, fine, study it, but we need a place in the school system for this other stuff.
Exactly.
Whether it's Think and Grow Rich and some reading time, or it's your book to understand financial literacy or some basic financial literacy, whatever it is, we just need that in there. We're not saying to get rid of the arts or to get rid of gym. No. It's more just we need a place for some of this material to be covered.
Right.
So if you were speaking to a parent right now with kids in grade 9 and 10, first part of high school, what would you tell them for them to get some financial literacy for their children? Obviously, your book is kind of an easy place to start, and we'll link to it in the show notes here. But is there anything else that comes to mind? I don't want to just point directly at your book because some people think that's very self-serving. But we're here to talk about your book. So, of course, your book is a great resource. But anything else come to mind for you where they could go, or anything at the library? Just what comes to mind?
Oh yes, there are, and it's funny because when I was doing my master's, and obviously my topic was about lifestyle, having a great lifestyle, adult lifestyle when you're financial literate.
You did a master's on Your Life, Your Terms? Oh my God. I didn't know they offered that. That's great.
Ingrid, leave what you're doing right now. We're going to restart that program.
My thesis.
Yeah, we happen to have a training room here that is empty because we can't host anyone in it. We can start hosting you as a Zoom teacher in here.
Right. And even at my school, after I had the back and forth with the Minister of Education and the board, I started a financial literacy club at school because when I realized that nothing was going to go on. So for opportunities like this is good for parents, to tell parents, for students to join the club, because this is where you'll learn stuff. Even in my book, I mentioned lots of other books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Wealthy Barber by whatever.
I forget his name now too.
David Chilton.
Chilton. There are a number of books out there, but going back to when I was doing my master's and I was doing my thesis, I did it on financial education, adult financial education and lifestyle later on, and there information out there online. In the back of the book, I put some resources as well. Yeah. And so there's information out there, but it's like they're the best kept secret. I did not even know that Canada had a November National Financial Literacy Month. Did you guys know?
No.
They don't. I don't think they do much about it.
Maybe I heard about it and just rolled my eyes.
Right. I didn't know until I was doing my master's there. So information is out there, right? Even McGill. There is something from McGill about financial education that they're trying to get their students to participate in. So lots of information is out there, right? There are lots of podcasts on finances. There's a wealth of information, but it's just that it's just hidden. It's like nobody's sharing this. And these are the things you can share in school, because sometimes when you're watching those other YouTube, you could watch a YouTube on financial literacy, financial education, pieces, and that will help students. I remember in the club, there is this program now, I can't remember what it's called, but it was basically helping somebody to do like a debt roll-up strategy. So they had all these debts, and to just to just share how you can pay down the smallest debt first, and then you move on to the next one, and eventually you clean off all your debt. Simple things, but it really goes a long way. So these are little things that's out there that, parents can access themselves to share with their parents. They can sit down and do it together. They can listen together, discuss things together at the table. Again, money becomes a taboo in lots of families. They don't talk about finances. They don't talk about money. They don't talk about debt. Some people are embarrassed by it for whatever reason. But I think that if you make it become, just like when kids are growing up, you teach them to count, you teach them to read, that's where you start. Teach them about money too. Start there. Start teaching them about money at an early age, and make it be a constant thing that you talk about, right? And share what you're doing with them. Share whatever struggles you're having, and then look to all these resources that are available out there to help you to navigate things and to show them so that they too can understand, so that when they're the adults, and then they will be able to manage themselves well, and then they can pass it on to their children, right? And it kind of changed the trajectory of things, because it's like a domino effect, Now I know better. I'm going to teach my kids. They know, and stuff. So I think
not only do they know the
there.
network of people that you guys know will now help your children because
Yes.
you guys know people on the similar path, and that network keeps growing and kind of nourishing the network. It's really
Absolutely.
powerful, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You said something really important there, that some people are embarrassed by debt. I hate using the excuse I'm about to use, because I think it's a cop-out in a lot of areas of life, but it's not really your fault if you're listening to this and you're in debt. And I hate saying that it's not your fault. But in this case, I feel like the system has been so structured to load you up with debt,
Yes.
that if you find yourself in a situation where you got a lot of Visa cards and a lot of debt and you don't know how to get out from it, it's not really your fault. The system's been designed that way. So, but you can get out of it. And so books like yours, Ingrid, are really powerful. And I also love the if you're fighting with any sort of mindset issues, the back that you've written here, like the
Yes.
personal development books almost had more of an impact on me
Yes.
than anything. And the stuff that you've shared, obviously Think and Grow Rich is like right at the top of your list here. But some of these other ones, and you even shared a great one here that's one of my personal favorites, is Ready, Fire, Aim, 0 to 100 million in no time flat by Michael Masterson.
Yes.
The first 2 or 3 chapters of that book, you learn more about business building than in like an entire university level business course. So like that book, your back of your book is a great resource for that kind of stuff. So if you're struggling with anything, don't discount the personal development side, because I know it's benefited us, and I'm sure it's benefited you
Absolutely.
guys.
Yeah. For me, it just gave me a different line of thinking that I wasn't exposed to, and it opened up possibilities that I didn't even realize were possibilities. Like I wasn't searching for those things and thinking they were impossible, and then trying to get them proved as possible. It just gave me a whole different perspective on a lot of stuff. A lot of that personal development stuff was really, really good.
Absolutely, because to change people's mindset sometimes, because people have mindset about money, believe it or not, right? And I agree with you. They're not to be blamed for the most part, because it's how they were socialized, it's how they grew up, is what they, like I mentioned earlier about the parents buying the lottery. Kids think that the only way I can get ahead or get a little extra money is to buy the lottery. So it's just during the formative years, if you can nip things at that point, it will go a far way, right? So your mindset too, you have to change that. And how do you change it? You build it by the resources that are there, listen to that, and eventually it will just change how you think about money, about finances, and how you conduct your financial affairs.
The only thing I'd say, so you're right. And then about the book is, you mentioned for people looking to kind of learn it, maybe adults or whatever. I think this type of thing for someone that's end of high school, beginning of college, university years, if they choose to go down that path.
Yes.
But this is hitting in your late teens, mid to late teens, even early 20s. It's written, it's almost text. It's not written like a textbook, but there's enough information there that it's like a textbook.
Yes.
That's an easy read that would be really valuable. That's where I think the sweet spot is. And if you can, I know just for myself, I was fortunate probably to your influence, because you started diving into that stuff sooner. I don't want to give you the credit for that, but I
I heard you loud and clear.
got
I'm
to
making
give
a
you
little
some of the
note
credit.
right now.
But
Nick owes me a lot. That's my note.
so when it hit me in my early 20s, I forget when I started reading this stuff, but I was like late teens, early 20s, started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Wealthy Barber, Millionaire Next Door. Those were like the first ones that I kind of dove into. It really just, it's what set me onto this path that I wouldn't have been on otherwise.
Yep.
Right. I think those years, because you have so much time, and if you have a little bit of ambition in those years and you get the right information in your hands, all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, your eyes just like open, and you're like, it's like you figured out the matrix all of a sudden. You can start operating at a different level, you know?
Absolutely. And when you're young, you figure you have your whole life ahead of you, so you're willing to try things. You know, people who are older, they're thinking, it's too late for me. But when you're younger,
well, then you have kids, you're like, I got to take care of these
exactly.
kids.
So the earlier the better, which was what it was all about my students, right? And I realized that everybody needs it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ingrid, you're doing all of us a service by putting this out there, so thank you. I mean that very sincerely. And where will people go to get the book?
They can go to Amazon. It's on Amazon. I do have a website they can go to access it easily too. It's Richard, help me out there.
We'll
Financial Literacy Rocks.
Is that what it is?
No,
Yes.
good.
Financial, both. They're kind of integrated. So goodgradesrock.com at the back of the book, and which takes you to financialliteracy.rocks.com. Yeah.
And we will link to it in the show notes of this episode. So if you go to rockstarinnercircle.com/podcast and you find this episode with Ingrid and Richard, we will have links to that there as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I do blogs. I try to put little tips out there about finances, personal finance. I try to put one up once a week. So there are great information there about even credit score, building your credit, dealing with credit cards, improve, and getting out of debt and stuff like that. So the little blogs there to help them with little tips that people can use, simple things that everybody can understand to just improve their finances. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this, both of you. Richard, you got to stop talking here.
Nah.
You were just hogging the mic on this episode. Thank you guys so much. Really, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate
I'm here
it.
for emotional support.
Yeah.
I know.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode with Ingrid and Richard Clayton. And the book, again, is Good Grades Rock, but A+ does not equal success. The URL to get to the book information and to the workshops is financialliteracy.rocks.com. That's financialliteracy.rocks.com. In the top right corner, you'll see a link to workshops. We will put links to that and to the Amazon page for her book in the show notes of this episode at rockstarinnercircle.com/podcast. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com/podcast. And remember, if you are listening to this and you want to get some education from us here at Rockstar, you can check out everything we're doing at rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for this episode. Until next time, your life, your terms.